have concerns about some things that are happening right now, right? And as he mentioned, my personal concern is over environmental issues and specific proposed budget cuts to climate research programs, specifically the EPA. So the first thing people ask me when they meet me is, oh, so do you believe in climate change? And that's my favorite question, because it's like being asked, do I believe in Santa Claus? By using the word believe in climate change, you're essentially saying that there's room for speculation right from the beginning of the conversation. And that's just not true, because climate change is a thing. That's not what we're actually arguing about these days. But yet people still seem to think that we are. Climate change is a fact. It's tangible. We have evidence. We can put our hands on it. We can touch it, see it, measure it, feel it when it's 70 degrees in January. We know that climate has always changed throughout the history of the Earth. It's not just a thing that's happening today. It's literally always happened. So I sort of think it's weird that we even use that phrase, because it's just a thing. It's an Earth process. The real issue is, are humans impacting it? Have we increased the rate of change? And all of those we can argue until the end of time, but what I say is we have to live with it either way. We know that it's changing, we know that it's warming, we have to live with it. So the real question isn't who's to blame, who can we point at, who do we yell at? The question is, what do we do? How do we live with it? How do we survive? So in my specific field, I focus on hydrology, and I focus on water availability. In a previous life, I was an intelligence analyst with the United States Air Force. My job was to look at developing situations throughout the world and assess how likely it was for that situation to impact our mission and our national security. And I will tell you that while I was in Iraq, I saw water being sold on the black market. There are areas in this world where they do not have access to water, and therefore they don't have access to food. And that is a direct threat to our security. It's a direct threat in a globalized world to everyone's security. I don't know if you've paid attention, but right now the UN is calling for billions of dollars because they are on the verge of having to declare a famine in 4 areas. That has never happened in the history of the UN. Those areas for reference are South Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, and Yemen. The capital city of Yemen has 21 million people, and the earliest projections say that they will run out of water this year. That's 21 million people in a capital city that might not have water. So this is a legitimate concern, because where do those 21 million people go? We'll have a speaker later, but I can guarantee you they'll become refugees. That's an issue that a globalized world has to think about. We end up with water conflicts. So right now it's estimated that 85% of the water used in the entire world is for agriculture. So the first place that we will feel water shortages is actually in food shortages, and that's famines. Just to clarify, the word famine is a scientific term that we only use once people are already dying from food shortages. So that means that this is already a dire issue, and they're facing catastrophe, and they don't have the money for it. So look into that if you're curious about it. And this comes from our dependency on groundwater, which is where I specifically study. My study area, my research is on the High Plains Aquifer. So this matters to us because that's an aquifer in the United States. Just some facts and figures for you, and I do have my research with me if you would like references and citations. 23 to 30% of the total groundwater pumped in this country comes from that one aquifer. We're very dependent on the High Plains Aquifer. 19% of our wheat, 19% of our cotton, 15% of our corn, and 18% of our cattle industry all come from this aquifer, which was estimated to be worth $35 billion in the year 2007. So 10 years ago. The problem with this is that our projections say that parts of this aquifer will run dry in the next few decades. What happens when it runs dry? Farmers are faced with the decision to pay more for expensive irrigation or change their land use to something that provides less yield, which means less food production over time at the same time that our global population is exploding. We need 60% more food than we have today in 50 years. How are we going to do that with less water? That's what I focus on. So how we look at this is from a budget standpoint. We look at it like a bank account. We need to know how much water we have, which we don't know. I'll tell you right now, we just don't know. We need to know how much water we're putting in. That's precipitation. We also don't know that. And then we need to know how much we're taking out. This is how we balance our bank account. But could you balance a bank account if you didn't know how much money you had, or you didn't know how much money you were putting in? No. This is why we need scientists. This is why we still need the EPA. This is why we need people like me. We need research. We need to answer these questions so that we know how to survive this in the future. To let you guys know why this matters locally, anyone who has come in contact with Sam Perkins, he is your Catawba River keeper. He will tell you that the Catawba River is the most water-stressed river east of the Mississippi. This directly impacts every person in this room. That river is water-stressed. If you didn't already know that, chances are you have at least heard the term coal ash. Pollution also is a withdrawal from our total water availability. What pollution does is takes all of this water away. Yes, it's still there, but now we have to spend millions of dollars to clean it and treat it. That's why we need the EPA. That's why we need scientists. That's why we need this research. I just want to point out a few things. By cutting funding to the EPA right now, we may save money today. Where we will lose money is in the future, because it is more expensive to drill deeper as our water table lowers as we exploit this resource and use it. In my personal research study area, our wells are already running dry. So I'm dealing with farmers who are already faced with failure of their crops. They don't even have the option to drill deeper, and if they did, it would cost them too much money to be able to do it. It also costs more money to clean spills that have gone on unchecked, whereas we could catch them as soon as they happen and clean them up quickly. It costs more money to treat polluted, dirty water and make sure it's safe for human consumption. It costs more money to replace infrastructure than it does to maintain infrastructure. And I'm sure at least one person in this room wants to ask me, what about desalination? I see it out there, I see it every time. Desalination is an option, but it is not a viable option today. It cannot fully replace the amount of water that we need, and it is also very energy dependent and expensive. It's an expensive solution that doesn't fix the core problem, which is how we use our resources. So I want to leave you with two thoughts. The first is that every time we announce we've discovered a planet, the first question on everyone's mind is, does that planet have water? Why is that? Because we know that water means life. And yet on this planet, today, water for some people means illness, disease, and sometimes even death. How have we allowed that to happen on our own planet? And to leave you with one quote from one of my research articles by Stewart and Allen in 2015, water resources, unlike many important commodities, do not have a substitute.